Well, I want to discuss something actually that's the biggest threat to the U.S. dollar, and a lot of times people say they could bring it down with gold or silver. Yeah, you probably could in some ways if everybody did it, but not everybody does it. But there's been inventions out there before that have used water or splitting hydrogen from water to add extra fuel mileage. Also, there was the Pantone device, GEET device. This is actually, I'm just displaying here something I picked up for the little Suzuki Jeep I have that I'm putting on, which probably will give about 20% greater mileage with a plain, simple carbureted version. But what could have actually brought down the whole dollar empire is the fact that the dollar is backed by oil itself. And what happens with oil itself is that nations need to hold U.S. dollars in order to purchase oil with, and that is actually why there is such a creation of demand for dollars. Now, this was a car back in 2008. It was developed in Japan. It was the Genepack. Now, they say it's a hoax. They show it as a hoax and stuff and everything. I don't think it was. If you look all the way back, there's been a number of inventors. Now, there's various technologies. The one I just showed here is more simplistic, but it's still more refined than the stuff they were doing back when they had the $147 a barrel oil, and the gasoline prices were approaching $5. It was still, this is actually more refined design, but still, it just involves simple electricity from your alternator to produce some Brown's gas, they call it, to add to the fuel, which gives you a more complete mix. Now, the one problem with some of these things is when you add these to your vehicle, if it's a computerized vehicle, you have to do some adjustments, and you're not allowed to because of the EPA and all this type of stuff. And they also will not mass produce these probably because of safety reasons, even though this is just made on demand and it's not stored anywhere in a container. It's made on demand in this dry cell right here. But back in 2008, Genepack actually demonstrated this car, which is used a more refined technology, probably somewhat based upon Stanley Myer's technology. But this, what I'm stating is, I wish I PDF'd that article from way back when, because it wasn't much after when Genepack of Japan came out with this car. The major manufacturers of vehicles in Japan were said at a car show that they were going to come out with luxury vehicles that you would be able to run water, and basically the system's not running off of water. It's a special electrolysis or something. It's a frequency, I think, that's applied to some type of system. It's not that simple, actually, but somehow it's some type of frequency or electronic gizmo or whatever the heck it is that is actually splitting the hydrogen off the water, and then the vehicle's running off the hydrogen itself, which is very clean, and it can actually run a long distance on a small amount of water, and the byproduct is water itself, so you actually never use up all the water too. It just goes back into the air. There's no pollution. And there was major Japanese companies that says, hey, we're not going to just come out with little econo boxes like this. We're going to come out with luxury cars. Well, the thing is, they would have sold like crazy, and guess what would have happened to the U.S. dollar once this technology just went everywhere? It would have went down to zero because there would have been zero demand for U.S. dollars to buy oil. The whole thing that holds the dollar together today is oil itself. Now, this is a dry cell, and that's the system I have, which is a very simplistic system, but it still works okay to give you a little bit more fuel mileage. Really, how these simple versions work better to give you a little fuel mileage is that they will add a little bit of a volatile hydrogen mix to the existing gasoline and give you a more complete burn. That is really why they increase the mileage. They don't really increase it per free energy or anything like that, or like that, because what's going on is you do have a little bit of a waste byproduct of gasoline out the exhaust, But when you bring down the emissions, in other words, that's what's really what this device will do by introducing a little bit of a hydrogen into the air-fuel mix. What happens is you will also get a booster efficiency because you're burning up more of the existing gasoline. It does work. It does work, especially on carbureted cars. The problem is with computerized cars, the O2 sensor tends to there's a little more complexity involved. You actually have to, if you can actually set your system and split the, make it pure hydrogen that goes into the intake, it would actually not affect the computer. But the fact that there's some oxygen in there, it will affect the O2 sensor and it'll richen up the fuel mixture, and you won't get a boost in mileage. But this system does work great on older carbureted cars, and there's ways to modify it for the newer cars too. But nobody's doing it because a lot of people are armchair, and they just won't do it. But there have been a number of inventors in the past that basically, have expired, we'll just put it that way, that have used technology like this to produce, let's call it hydrogen-powered cars, but where the hydrogen actually is coming from is from the water. But this is actually the thing that could bring down the U.S. dollar, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because really the planners, long-term, this technology is never going to be able to be held down forever. And long-term, probably what will happen is water itself will be the essential commodity that will be backing currencies. You might see food and agricultural products, livestock products backing currencies, and that is why we have genetically modified foods where we have seeds being sold to big multinational conglomerates that are controlling the food supply on this earth. So they're trying to get you coming and going. You could be free, but most people do not get off their ass to be free, and that's the problem. That is essentially is the problem. Now, this is actually a picture of maybe Joe cell. I don't know if this is the actual Joe cell itself. It was actually, the guy was named Joe, so they called it the Joe cell for splitting off hydrogen. Now, this cell turned out to be far more efficient, and it seemed to produce another type of energy that just was beyond what the hydrogen really was. It seemed to be tapping into something else that was not understood by conventional science. It was developed by a guy in Australia called Joe. It's not just the concentric rings of stainless steel, but it also has to do with the frequencies and circuitry that is used in applying the electricity to the water, where it splits off the hydrogen. They actually got the car to run off of pure hydrogen, off of just the hydrogen from the water. They were able to do this, and they were under threats from the government. This was back in the 90s. And this was actually after, that was after the Stanley Myer's water-powered car. A lot of people say water, but it's not actually water. It's hydrogen from water, and it's a special electrolysis process that splits the hydrogen from water. Now, I went back and I'm experimenting with a good quality dry cells kit, but it's nothing like this I'm showing here, where you're going to actually be able to run the entire vehicle off of hydrogen from water. But this is what happened here is Stanley Myers did not just make the dune buggy. He was running various vehicles off of this, even heavy trucks, and he even said he was able to do an airplane. He didn't get it up. That wasn't shown like flying in the air, but he said it was possible. But he had various vehicles running off of this. This was all confiscated by the government, stolen, or whatever the hell it was. It's gone. It's gone. This was all over the news. But the thing is, it's a major, at the time, it would be a major threat to the U.S. dollar itself, because the U.S. dollar is backed by oil. The only thing that actually creates the biggest demand for dollars is the fact that nations have to have U.S. dollars to purchase oil. And that's really the key to every damn thing. As far now, I don't want to see the United States go under, but the point is, what I'm looking at here is that free energy, or if you want to call this free energy, maybe it's not exactly free energy, it's tapping into another source. It's the fact that energy like this, that it's much lower cost, would actually bring humanity up to, I don't know, 10 degrees higher or whatever the heck it is, because that would actually free us up from more restrictive labors by having machines do the job and we'd be able to power the machines for basically nothing, practically nothing. And it would actually elevate mankind across the world, but that's not how it goes, because the powers that be basically are very spiteful, very, very spiteful. And that's really how we have the situation going. But I'm going to look into a little bit more of this. This is a picture of Stanley Myer. Actually, when he came out of a restaurant, he was dealing with, I think it was a couple of potential Belgium investors. They said they were from Belgium. A couple of investors. He drank something in a restaurant, and he realized he was poisoned. As soon as he walked out, he goes, "Oh my God, I was poisoned," and he dropped dead on the spot at age 58. Then the plans for the car disappeared. The car disappeared. It was confiscated by the government and all this kind of garbage. And it was over. But the Joe Cell came later on from Australia. And they also got visited by the authorities. Now, myself, I'm just going to do some simple stuff. And, if it gives me a savings, fine. It gives me a savings. But I also want to point out something else. The tsunami that happened in Japan in 2011. I don't know if this is conspiracy land, but I looked at a couple things on YouTube about, when they showed the volcano. I forgot what mountain it was on, and they showed the bright orb of light on the bottom. It was on a webcam. It seemed a very much unnatural phenomenon. There was a couple things that was going on. But the Japanese I do notice for a fact, I wish I PDF'd that article and I can't find it on a Wayback Machine anywhere, but it was at a car symposium. Now, this is a Toyota that's going to be running on hydrogen. But, the caveat is this. They tell you that hydrogen, to produce hydrogen and who another one was, there's some of the actors in, I think it was Weaver, the one that was on, one of the actors in California. He's a big proponent of this stuff too, with hydrogen powered cars. But the problem is, they'll tell you, the conventional people will tell you that it takes a lot of fuel to actually make the hydrogen the way it is today. But I don't really think so. I think what Stanley Myers and actually what this person did in Australia, Joe, whatever it was, did find ways to produce hydrogen much cheaper. But it actually is a major, major, major threat to our entire economic system, the way it's already entrenched. But not really. Not really for the average person. Not really at all for the average person. The thing is, when you start thinking about it, if everything could be powered for practically nothing, including, all the transportation of goods, all the farm machinery that actually produces which works the fields, all the power equipment, all the electrical equipment we have could be actually powered for nothing, practically nothing, except for wear and tear on the machinery and lubrication of the machinery and whatever. It would actually greatly up the produce across the board. But the problem is, the guys on the top don't want it that way because they got an entrenched racket, and that's what it goes down to. This actually is the number one threat, and Stanley Myers was a big threat to the powers that be. Now, the situation, what I'm looking at, though, long term, this technology is not going to be able to be kept down. What's going to happen in the future, though, is you're looking at what the most essential commodity is going to be, water itself. Even though Water has probably been on this planet. It's probably older than the planet itself. It's billions and billions of years old. The same water's been here forever and ever and ever. They're going to freaking put a meter on it somehow. And, you know, it's going to be some kind of charge or whatever the hell it is. And it's called control. It's called control. You know, the spiteful is what you got to look at it, the way the elite are. They're the spiteful. They can't allow anybody else to be better or do better. They got to be spiteful. That's exactly how the elite work. That's their whole modus operandi. In other words, if somebody comes up with a better idea, you know, this Stanley Myer was no formally trained engineer, but he came up with this. Perseverance in work can actually, you know, overcome no matter what, any stumbling block. Anybody could tell you that. As a matter of, you know, the big four-letter word out there to success is work. It really is work. But the elite don't want it that way. They are the spiteful. They are the spiteful. And that's 99% of the damn problem that we got right now. But the problem is when people are handed something and they think they're handed something, they sit on their lazy ass and then they accept the situation. But it's not like, you know, you're going to change the world right away, but you can change it step by step. That's always my contention. And, you know, this idea is something that's not going away. I'm exploring a little bit further with it, and I'm going to be doing I am doing some crude stuff with this dry cell like this, and I'm going to be doing some experiments. But, you know, it would be nice if you could get it to run on 100% free energy pretty much per se, but it's not going to be that way. And since I keep older vehicles that are non-computerized, it's going to actually have a fairly good, you know, a fairly good significant difference in the output. But again, this invention would have been available turnkey by Japanese auto manufacturers. They were talking about this in 2011. And guess who got hit by the tsunami? And, you know, it was actually mainly where the Japanese auto manufacturers were. I'm highly suspicious of that. I'm highly suspicious of why they were hit. You know, I mean, I don't think it was a natural event. And I don't like delving down a conspiracy trail too much, but, you know, I realized that they do have some high-tech weapons or whatever the hell it is. They could have made I don't think it was a natural event. Japan's one country that is probably far more independent and minded than anybody else in the world. And that's not really how the globalists want it. So, anyway, they're going to make them comply or whatever. So, I don't think this Genepax was a hoax at all. But you can also see it's not just Genepax that came out with this. It was Stanley Myer. It was the Joe Cell. And now if you look across YouTube, you can see various videos of people getting a lot more miles per gallon with various types of these type of hydrogen from water cells. And some of them are actually completely powering their car practically off of them. Now this setup here is actually a good quality. I'm not advertising for them or nothing, but this is one I bought, the Liberator, which I think is a good quality simplistic unit. It's not using anything with frequencies or anything like that. It just adds a little bit of HHO or hydroxy gas or whatever you want to call it, or Brown's gas, to the existing fuel mix to give you a more complete burn. But the technology is actually far more developed than that. But the point being is that if this technology came out overnight, which it seems to have already been invented in several times over, but in several areas by various people, rediscovered by various people, it would have actually turned the tide. Well, it would have just undermined the entire structure, the financial structure as we know it today. And I swear, I wish I PDF'd that article, because it was like, this Genepax is no joke. This is no hoax. It's not a fake. the technology exists. You know, it's like hydrogen from water. And, you know, you can even see today, they're not going to even allow too much with hydrogen-powered cars with Honda and Toyota to be coming over here too easily, too. It is a racket, and what I look at it like this, you know, it's almost like the same deal with J.P. Morgan and Tesla. You know, he wrecked the Warden Cliff Tower. Basically didn't allow him to pursue his device. And this technology, I think, has been around. You know, there's been free energy technologies. You probably even go back to the pyramids. The pyramids themselves were probably somewhat along the lines of what Tesla was doing at Warden Cliff. But it would undermine the entire system the way the U.S. dollar is structured. There's demand for U.S. dollars because people have to trade, have to buy oil with U.S. dollars. And therein lies the problem. Now, I'm not anti-U.S., but, you know, the way I look at it, they got some other games. They got other games up their sleeve in the long run. They realize that this technology is not going to be able to be kept down. And when it does come out that, you know, vehicles are 100% pollution-free, they run off of hydrogen from split from water or whatever the heck it is, there's going to be new controls in place. And I think the new controls that are being in place are going to be the water itself and also the food supply through genetically modified food. Now, I actually put a video out, and it was not based upon any kind of pseudoscience or anything like that, but they did these experiments back, it was about 15 years ago. The title of the video, I believe, is called The Primeval Code. It's basically waking up the primeval code that's in all seeds. If you actually have genetically modified seeds, what you can do, there's an actually electronic process, it's actually fairly simple, that can wake up the DNA that's in, say, wheat seeds, ordinary seeds, whether they're genetically modified or not, and wake up the primeval code that's in there, and you will have a super crop. That would actually solve the problem with overpopulation, not having enough food supply, because they can grow foods in climates in a shorter period of time, which would mean that it could be grown in climates that are much colder, because instead of taking so many more months to grow and process a wheat crop, it can take less weeks. But anyway, this actually is the number one threat to the dollar. This, you're looking at it right here. Hydrogen water-powered cars. And it would just totally destroy the demand for oil. And it would crush Russia, too. It would crush Russia, the Middle East, all the oil-producing nations. And, you know, I'm going to be pursuing this technology myself. I'm going to start simple and do it in baby steps and see how far I can get with it, because I'm not that stupid, but I want to just go with something I know works right now and keep it simple, stupid, and from there we'll go with some other more complicated things, like with using some type of frequencies to help break the hydrogen off the water and see if we can get more output. So anyway, Zero Fossil Fuel on YouTube is actually a very good source of information too. So, over and out. But if you want to really know what the biggest threat to the U.S. dollar is, it's some of these inventions like this that could bring us energy for practically nothing. Because there goes the underpinnings of the U.S. dollar, which is oil.